All right. Hello, everyone. I am Derek Robinson. I am the New Professionals and Graduate Student IVE for East KC Liaison for NASPA. We are here with Walter P. Parrish, who is a doctoral student. He is from University of Wisconsin-Madison, and he is in the Educational Leadership and Policy Analysis program. We are here today to talk about, why a PhD or why a master's program, or how do we go through the doctoral candidate process. And Walter is going to be a really good resource and answer a few questions. I will tell you a little bit more about himself. Let me give 1 second. All right. The NASPA IVE Regional New Professionals and Graduate Student NPGS Knowledge Community presents the Higher Education Learning, Pursuing, and Ph.D. in Higher Education Student Affairs. To pursue the doctoral degree or not? This is the question for many new professionals in the field of higher education and student affairs who desires advancement. So we are going to join Walter P. Parrish. He will share his experiences of how he got into his PhD program and how his journey is. So he is Walter P. Parrish, and I'll let him talk a little bit about himself. So go ahead, Walter, introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Walter. I am originally from Philadelphia, PA, so I'm very new to the Midwest. So as was previously mentioned, I am a first-year doctoral student in the Educational Leadership and Policy Analysis program at UW-Madison. Our program has 3 different strands, and so I'm in the higher education, higher, post-secondary, and continuing education strand. And my research is around organizational culture, workplace discrimination, and workforce diversity in higher education. And more specifically, I'm becoming interested in areas of bullying, workplace bullying, and what that means for faculty and administrators. How does that differ from socialization, and what are the psychological, emotional, and somatic consequences of bullying in the workplace? We often hear about bullying in K through 12, and so it's time to illuminate that in the workplace, specifically in academia. What else? I don't know. I'm an open book, so any other questions, feel free to ask.
All right. All right, so we have a few questions for Walter, and if you all have questions, please, if you can, we're not for sure, you can use the group chat to ask questions. Also, I put in the Facebook group, which is https the /marks www.facebook.com groups NPGS IV. So please feel free to ask questions for Walter and I while we go through questions and experiences of Walter. So let's do the pre-doctoral question. So Walter, why did you pursue a PhD, or what made you interested in a PhD?
During my master's program, I had several classes with doctoral students, and I always viewed PhD students, or those with PhDs, in this high regard. And so it's always piqued my interest. Well, not always. Since my master's program, it's piqued my interest. But my decision to pursue a PhD was for a few reasons. One was career mobility. I wanted more access to positions and experiences in higher education, and a PhD will offer me that. The second one is to pursue research in my areas of interest. I worked in student affairs. I've been working in student affairs since December 2007, and so I wanted to gain more knowledge, skills, and competencies in my specific interests, which are outside of student affairs, kind of, but more along the lines of just general administration in higher education. And the third one is solely selfish personal reasons. I wanted to prove to myself that I could do this. I've always um, considered myself, well, K through 12 and kind of undergrad, I can consider myself to be kind of an average student. I've always worked, at least 1 to 2 jobs since high school, and I've had to deal with some struggles, which impacted my academics. And so, um, graduate school was a time for me to really focus on my academics and understand that I do have the capacity to do this. And so, I want to be one of the 1% of people who have a PhD. I want to be another black male with a PhD to inspire others. So those are my reasons, really.
That's great, Walter. So where did you go for undergrad, and um, any did you have any doubts or not doubts? Did you have any interest while in undergrad? Like, I eventually would like to do a PhD. Did you have any mentors to possibly help you, or organizations that influenced you as well?
Um, so I went to undergrad in Pennsylvania. It's called Millersville University, Pennsylvania. It's a smaller, mid-size teaching college or university. And my interest in student affairs was peaked then. I really didn't know you can have a career in student affairs or higher education. But I had absolutely no desire to even go and get my master's in undergrad. I just wanted to finish undergrad, even to the point where when I graduated, I didn't go straight into graduate school. I sought positions in higher education um, with just a bachelor's degree, and I was fortunate enough to gain an opportunity at Drexel University. I did have a mentor who had a doctorate, who had a PhD, but it wasn't something that I was really reaching for. I just knew that I wanted a career that would allow me to offer students the same, if not a better experience than I was receiving, and to provide, and to give back to the field what it has really given to me, which was, a nurturing environment, great mentors, great supporters, who really cared about me holistically and my future. So, like I said, the PhD really didn't pique my interest until my master's program. I had a faculty member say to me, are you applying to the PhD program? And I was like, what? so, so yeah, originally it wasn't there, and if you'd asked me this 10 years ago, I would have said absolutely not.
No, that is great to know. And after you finished your master's degree, did you take some years off, or did you go straight through it?
Yeah, I after my master's, so between my master's and my bachelor's, I worked for almost 2 years, and then after my master's, I worked for about a little over 3 years before going back, and I took that time to really um, get experience with some functional areas I was not too familiar with, or I didn't have any direct experience with,
Hmm.
and also to really define um, and break down what my interests were. And so I was, reading articles, looking up faculty, really exploring what the options are out there. Because I think a lot of times when I talk to other people who may be interested in the PhD, or even when I think about my time earlier, if someone were to ask me then, I would say, oh, I'm interested in diversity. Oh, I'm interested in, you know, student success. But to really take this funnel effect and really focus in on what specifically you want to do, um, I was able to do that in those 3 years and really to examine, the nuances of my interests.
Okay. No, that is great. Do you recommend that people take some time after their master's to get experience, or how do you feel about people, or maybe everyone's situation is different, but do you think it was good for you to take some time off?
I do think it was good for me. When when I think about my experiences in my master's program and even now, the level of engagement and discourse in the classroom is so much more rich if you have experience to complement what you're learning in the classroom. Prior to applying to PhD, I had a lot of doctoral students say, "Oh, you need to work." Well, it was actually um, mixed feedback. Some people would say, "Oh, you need to go in and have, X numbers of years of experience." But then some people said, "This is what you want to do. Go right into it." I don't think you need a significant amount of years, but I do think some experience is beneficial to your doctoral journey. Um, like I said, the level of engagement in the conversation and the discussions in class are so much. It's just very beneficial to be able to pull from prior experiences and to make connections to what you're learning. So I would recommend, at the very least, 2 to 3 years to
Hmm.
really focus and truly understand who you are, number one, as a professional, and what it is that you really want to do.
Okay. No, but these are good things. And if you all have questions, feel free to comment on the YouTube page, and we're gonna see if we can get the Q&A app open. Usually we do have that, but we just need to see if it's going to work with us today. All right, so Walter, what qualifications do you have to get into a doctoral program, or explain that process? It seems very difficult, or a really big decision for someone to make.
Yeah, so it's actually not that different from the master's application process. Um, I will say you should make it a high priority and really be strategic in your process. So the qualifications, or the requirements, I'll say, are number one, the GRE.
Mhm.
Scores last 5 years, and so if you do take time off, you'll have to retake it, um, based on when you took it to go into your master's program. So I had to retake the GRE,
Mhm.
which was dreadful. Uh, uh, a well, or a um, a respectable GPA. I'll put it that way.
What's respectable? I feel like that's the real question.
Um, I'll say, definitely in your master's program, I'll say that a 3.0 for sure. But I would even push to say, above a 3.3, or maybe even above a 3.5.
Okay.
Um, but it depends on the program. It depends on uh, what other things you're bringing to the table.
Hmm.
Okay, so if you have a low GPA but your GRE scores are high, that may balance out. If you have a low GRE score but you have a high GPA, that may balance out. It really depends on the program and the faculty and what they're looking for and who else is in the pool of candidates.
Hmm.
Um, a personal statement or essay. Some programs will require a writing sample, and then also recommendations from previous faculty, or other folks. And I would urge people to have, at least, uh, if the majority of your recommendations should be from faculty. So if your program of interest requires 3 recommendations, should be from faculty, um, and one could be from supervisor or a student affairs professional or something like that. Um, the qualifications. So I've come across some programs that have, asked for, a certain GPA, or, do not apply if you don't have this GRE score.
Hmm.
But really, the faculty are looking for a portfolio of work that will give them the impression that you have the capacity to successfully complete doctoral work. And so my program, if you look on the ELPA, which is ELPA, which is the acronym for our program, if you look on our page, there are no specific requirements in regards to GRE and GPA. They're really looking for a body of work or previous behaviors that really will predict future behaviors.
Okay. What was your biggest considerations into deciding what program that you decided on the program, but was location big? Was faculty and staff research a big factor? Or what made you interested in the program that you are in today?
Yeah. One big thing was I did not want a heavy student affairs program.
Okay.
I felt like I got that in my master's program. I felt like because I worked in student affairs for several years, I felt like I had, excuse me, I felt like I had that.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted a program that would offer me more a broad range of higher education, general higher education administrative courses, and really a good mix. That's what I really, really wanted, was a good mix of coursework. Particularly a program that had a policy aspect to it, which is something that I did not get in my master's program. I had no familiarity with, but I knew that I wanted to tap into that realm. I also wanted a program at an institution that I was not familiar with. So I've been at large institutions, but I've never been at an institution this large. I've never been at a Big Ten size institution. So I really wanted that experience. I wanted a research intensive program, which speaks to the PhD versus EDD a little bit. And I wanted a network of faculty that were truly going to support my research interests and my educational journey. And so I would strongly recommend connecting with a faculty member who will support you, whose interests may be aligned to yours, and one who's really going to, who you feel like you can connect with. That, to be quite honest, can be your golden ticket into a PhD program. If a faculty member feels like you are, you have the potential to do the academic work, you have interests that may align or complement their work, or they may be interested in something new and provocative and creative that you have brought to the table, and they want to take you on, that is the golden ticket. And so connect with faculty, email them, ask questions, but read about the work that they're doing, so that way you can engage them in conversation and it not be so much of a one-way street. So something that I did was during those 3 years between my master's and now, I was reading about discrimination in the workplace, and I was Googling and on the library databases, and one person's name kept popping up over and over and over again. And I said, who is this man? I need to find out who this man is. So I Googled him, I LinkedIn him, and he's now my advisor, Jolando Jackson. But I connected with him on LinkedIn, and I said, hey, I'm interested in your research. It's also an interest of mine, I think, and I'm interested in the program as well. He responded right away and said, let's set up a meeting, and we talked for an hour. And I was calling my friends and I said, what does this mean? He wants to talk to me. And they were like, this is a good thing, And so for a faculty member who has absolutely no connections to me, who I have never met a day in my life, for him to take time out of his day, in particular an hour to talk with me, was significant. And so if you can really connect with a faculty member, that will be very beneficial to your application process.
All right. We do have a question. Jamie Lewis posted. She says, the level of engagement in conversation in the class, it is very beneficial to pull from prior experiences. This is so helpful as I consider pursuing a PhD, how specific in your research area do you need to be as you are considering pursuing the doctoral degree or the degree that you are trying to pursue? So.
I think so. You don't need to have your research question coming in because most likely that will change. It'll be altered in some way. So you don't need to be too detailed to the point where you're saying, "Oh, I want to, I want to research the impact that, this TRIO program has on Latina women, Latina first generation women." It doesn't need to be that detailed. But it also shouldn't be too broad where people don't really know what you're talking about, right? And so you don't want to be too broad and say, "Oh, I'm interested in student success at I'm interested in student success for Asian Pacific Islanders." What about student success? Are you talking about all Asian Pacific Islanders? Are you talking about women, men? So just try to massage it a little bit to leave room for opportunity for growth, but to also not be so vague that no one really knows what it is that you're talking about. I hope that answers Jamie's question. You don't want to be too broad and say, "Oh, I'm interested in student success I'm interested in student success for Asian Pacific Islanders."
Okay. All right. Yeah, that answered the question. I definitely agree. Let me see. When it comes to funding, that is a big question for a lot of us when it comes to doctoral programs. What sources are considered? What opportunities are available for doctoral students?
Well, funding was a big part. I, as a person who has paid for previous degrees, I vowed to not pay for this degree, and I don't think you should. So funding is based on programs. Some programs have graduate assistantships, RA, research assistantships, or what we have here at UW-Madison we call project assistants. All fall under the GA model. And some of those will be fully funded, some of them will be partially funded. It just depends. So definitely research that. Some programs offer little to no funding. And so I applied to 5 programs when I originally began the process, and one of them in a large city did not fund anything. Or if they did, they only provided funding for a few people. Here at UW-Madison, we offer several funding packages and fellowships. Fellowships, if you're not familiar with them, they are basically scholarships where you don't have to necessarily do anything, or there may be a small requirement to conduct research or present your research somewhere. At UW-Madison, we also have something called the Advanced Opportunity Fellow Program, which is for historically underrepresented populations or underserved populations. I didn't even apply for that. It was just something that kind of fell into my lap. I still don't know how I got that, but but I got it. And that offers me full funding, tuition, and a stipend for my first year and my dissertating year. And then any year in between that is up to me. If you, how should I phrase this? If your advisor is proactive and supportive and really wants you at the institution, they will also be an advocate for you or a provider of funding. So my advisor, told me that I could work in the research center that he runs, which is the Wisconsin Equity and Inclusion Laboratory, the WE Lab. And so I work there as a research associate. I also get a small stipend from there, but going into my next year, I'll be fully funded through that position. And so it really just depends. Some folks here, they don't have any assistantships.
Mhm.
So it depends on how much you're willing to tap into your personal resources or, financial aid and loans. That's not something I was willing to negotiate because I have enough debt. So it just depends, but definitely keep your ears to the ground for funding. It's out there. You just have to know where to look and to ask the right questions. How can I support myself? Do I get monthly stipends? Will this package pay for all 90%, 10% of my tuition? Yeah.
All right. No, that is good to know. There is something else that we have asked. It is, what is the course load like? I mean, I know for me going into a student affairs master's program, there is a lot that is required on top of our graduate assistantship and practicum experiences. So I'm sure even when you go to the doctoral level, it's even more demanding. So what is the course load like, and are there any worries that you will not make it through?
Well, I am making it through. I tell folks all the time, once I begin this process,
Mhm.
I'm in it for the long run. A quick analogy is one of my old coworkers said, the PhD is like a tiger, and you have to stay on the tiger or you'll get eaten. So I'm on the tiger for the long run. This is many folks have told me this previously in the past, but this is a marathon. It is not a sprint. And so even in my first year, I'm starting to understand that because there are some weeks which I'm very much over it. But I did not move all the way to the Midwest. I did not use resources, time, and energy for nothing. So I am finishing. So to the other point,
Moving forward, as you say.
moving yes, moving forward. That is my slogan.
Yeah.
Coursework. So course. So I'll differentiate coursework from course load. Coursework, not too different from the master's program, right? And so minimum 3 courses. There are some doctoral students there are some doctoral students who take 4 courses. Um, I even know one person who took 5 courses. She's kind of crazy in my opinion, but it's all personal preference and what you want to do. Um, for my program, or for some programs across the country, they take folks straight from their bachelor's, and so that will determine how many courses you have to complete. And so, similar to here, we do take some folks straight from the bachelor's, and so some people are in a rush to complete this coursework because they see some other folks who may be further along who may already have a master's degree. So that's when you'll see folks who may want to take 4 courses or 5 courses to try to rush that along. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it depending on your work style, or even just in general, because it can be a lot. Course load, which I'm defining as more so content in the classroom, it's heavy. The expectation is higher. The reading materials are more abundant. I have, on average, like 500 pages to read for a class a week. And, the expectation in regards to papers are definitely more extensive than masters. But the hope is, from the previous experience that you're getting, you'll be more engaged in the readings and in the papers, and you'll actually want to read some of this stuff. right, as opposed to it being a mandate or a means to an end. One other thing is to realize that you cannot read everything. And so, at least I can't. I'll speak from personal
No, I
experience.
agree.
Right? And so I can't read everything. And I've kind of gotten over that stage of trying to be the A1 perfect student who reads every single detail of the text and the literature. I read enough to have a understanding. I read enough to engage in conversation. I read enough to synthesize the literature and to be a contributor to the discourse in class. But you have to balance. And there's so many other things that are on your plate as a doctoral student, depending on how engaged you are across the university and the profession. You have to balance, and you have to know that you can't read everything, and time management is key. So it's definitely a lot more work, but it's not impossible. Derek, are you there? You froze on me. Seems like Derek has froze. Uh-oh.
I'm here.
Okay.
So tell us more about campus and that selection. Was location really important to you? We know that as new professionals and mid-level professionals that sometimes location, like being in a certain city, urban, or a college town might be important. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, I'm originally from Philadelphia, West Philadelphia, born and raised like Will Smith. And I've only lived in large, diverse cities. So I lived in Philly, besides my undergrad. I lived in Philly, I lived in Norfolk, Virginia, Atlanta, and the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia area. Deciding on Wisconsin took some time. Deciding on Wisconsin took some time. I had no concept of Wisconsin, the Midwest, besides Chicago and Ohio. And coming to a place that has the most incarcerated black men per capita in the United States, and also the worst K through 12 educational gap for Black and Latino students was definitely a consideration. But like I said, I wanted an experience that I hadn't had before. When you come to Wisconsin, I think people think that if you can survive a place like this, you can survive anywhere. The weather, the campus climate, there's not a lot of people of color. And so if you can survive this, in my opinion, you can survive anything. And also the cold, right? So it's not really an attractive city when I say it out loud. But all of these things are temporary, in my opinion. So I've bounced around enough in my career to know what I can do and what I can't do. So that's another reason why I think people should work before they come to a doctoral program, because you understand what it is that you are willing to sacrifice in your quality of life. I'm older now, so some things are important to me as opposed to when I was 24, 25. I'm 30, by the way. And just what can you sacrifice? So that's what it was for me. I also know people here already. So I knew someone who was applying to the program with me. She and I did an internship together in 2010. So I knew if I had no one on campus, I had her as a support. And I also came to campus prior to my decision to meet some folks to make sure that I had, make sure I had a network of folks who I could tap into if I needed that, emotional support.
All right, I'm back. I'm sorry.
Okay,
Technology, it happens. It
no
literally, I'm
problem.
just sitting here and I'm just like, I don't know what just happened, but I'm back. So we will continue. What are your plans when you, well, how is your dissertation process going? So tell us more about that.
So because I'm in my first year, I have not started the dissertation
Okay.
process. However, I have refined my topic um, to the point where I think I want to do a pilot study, which will inform my dissertation. And so I pretty much have a topic now, um, and all of my course writings, essays and things like that are around that topic if I can help it, to build on my dissertation. So while I have not technically begun the dissertation process, I think I kind of have, because everything I'm writing will be about that in some fashion. So I'm interested in, when I came in, I said I was interested in organizational behavior, workplace discrimination, workforce diversity, um, and job satisfaction, attrition and recruitment of underrepresented populations. But now I'm becoming more and more interested in workplace bullying, as I mentioned before. And so all of my writings are not necessarily around bullying, but they're around those three broad topics, which will inform the dissertation. And so, like I said, I hope to do a pilot study next year that will inform my dissertation, which I will hopefully begin in the fall of 2016.
All right.
Hopefully.
Well, Walter, where do you see yourself in after you're done with your doctoral degree, or where would you like to be career-wise?
That's a great question that I have not figured out yet, right? And so I have an idea, and I think people think you need to have um, this concrete idea of where it is that you want to be afterwards. When people
Mhm.
ask me that, I'm like, well, I came to school for a PhD, not to be a fortune teller. Uh,
Hey, yeah.
but I see myself, but you need to have an idea of what it is that you want to do. You can't be totally clueless. So I see myself in spaces that will inform uh, policies and practice around equity and inclusion in the workplace within higher education. And so what that looks like can be a variety of things. I could be in the policy realm, working for an organization such as ACE, the American Council on Education. They work with senior level administrators um, in regards to equity and inclusion. Um, I could, go back to student affairs and uh-oh, what happened?
Oh,
Okay. I could go back into student affairs to work in a functional area or to work in, an administrative, a more general administrative, upper level administrative position in student affairs,
mhm.
working with, staff. I could go into human resources um, from a equity and, discrimination standpoint. Or I could, go the tenure track faculty route. So those are, I would say, the three options that I'm juggling right now. Tenure track faculty position, policy realm, or a human resource massaging into student affairs or general university type of position. I don't think that really exists, so I'm trying to figure a way how to create that position, or maybe persuade someone to work with me on that. But right now, those are the three that I'm juggling, and I think it'll become more clear after this year. I'm applying for some internships that I'll hopefully get this summer, and so hopefully I'll be able to crystallize those things within the next year. But I will say, my actions and my work that I'm doing are pushing towards the faculty route. And I say that because if I ever change my mind and want to be faculty, I'll have the research experience, I'll have the publications, I'll have the conference presentations that are things that they want on that side, which will not hurt me on the other side if I wanted to be an administrator.
All right, we do have another question. We have Christia Worthy, sorry if I said that wrong. She is from Michigan State University, and she says, PhD versus EDD. What are your thoughts, and what comments have you heard from your colleagues and professors?
My thoughts are, and I'll give you my reasoning. So I was interested in a program that had an EDD. And I was looking at the coursework, and the coursework was pretty similar to that of a PhD. But there are more requirements depending on the program, more research requirements, coursework depending on the program for the PhD. Some EDDs like Harvard are just as, I'm not going to say just as intense, because the doctoral degree is intense regardless of where you go, but it really boils down to research versus practitioner. There's always this great debate about the PhD versus the EDD, who has the upper level, which one is more prestigious. I think we are moving away from that conversation, but I still think it'll exist because that's just society's way of putting things and people in a hierarchy. Even when you look at, medical dentists, medical doctors, you have, medical doctors versus a dentist and who's higher. It really depends on what you want to do. I wanted a degree that was a research intense degree that would allow me to hone my research skills, really be well trained in research and different types of methodologies. I wanted a degree that would translate into different realms if I decide to leave the university setting, and if I'd even decided to leave the educational setting. And so I was thinking long-term career mobility. And so because of my interests around workplace environments, I could stay in education, or I could move over to the private sector. That's not something that I'm thinking about right now, making that transition. But when I'm 50 or even 40 years old, who knows what will happen, right? We're in the age of, I'm not even sure if we're going to get Social Security when we're older, right? And so it's just a lot of different things that can occur that I'm taking into consideration. So I really wanted a degree that would translate across the board into different industries. And I think the PhD speaks to people a little bit differently than an EDD outside of an education setting.
All right. Well, thank you, Walter. I really appreciate that. All right, so we'll wrap this up. We'll have at least 5 more minutes, but we do have a few more questions.
Sure.
Sheree Williamson from Indiana University has a question. She said, I see you have organizational or organization memberships in your background, are you able to maintain organization and community service involvement and membership while being in your doctoral program?
Right now, I haven't been as active in some of my organizations, so personally, well, I guess personally and professional, depends on who you ask. I'm in a fraternity, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. That has taken a back seat slightly in regards to my level of engagement. I still connect with some of the younger brothers on campus. I still do service, which may or may not be connected to the fraternity. But I try to balance that a little bit better because at the end of the day, I'm here to get a degree. My involvement in professional associations, whether it be NASPA, ACPA, AERA, the American Education Research Association, it has also taken a little bit of backseat. I was heavily involved with ACPA. I held some leadership positions, and I ended my term last year because I knew I was coming to a doctoral program, and I didn't know how I would transition into the program. And so I wanted no distractions, no barriers, and no excuses really to get in my way of my first year. And I think as higher education professionals, student affairs professionals, we have this innate feeling to always want to be involved and to dive, nose in into our professional associations. And that is excellent. Service is excellent. But consider your work style, your transition, and allowing yourself to really be in the doctoral experience within your first or second semester to get your bearings together before you continue your process or diving back into your service with your professional associations. Just be considerate of that.
All right. Well, no, Walter, we really appreciate all this input, and I know I'm interested in possibly getting a doctoral degree along the way in my career, so this really helped out. I'm sure everyone who is watching appreciates your time. We just want to say thank you from the NPGS IVE KC for doing this.
Absolutely.
We want to ask you one more question. Is there anything that you would leave to the audience about getting a PhD or things to really think about when making that transition?
I would say make sure this is something that you want and really think about the reasons for doing it. If you just want the doctor in front of your name, this is not the game to be playing for that. Really think about your interests, what it is that you want to gain from this experience, and truly understand what that's going to look like for you. Are you disciplined enough to do the work? Are you motivated enough to do the work? Because like I said, there are some days, even within my first year, and these are random just moments of of feeling like I don't care and this is for the birds, or this is not for me, or I don't belong here. Imposter syndrome is so real, folks. It is so real. And so what motivated me really was people telling me that I could do it. I really just took the ball and shot it in the hole, right? And so you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe that you can do this to some extent, because there will be moments where you would doubt yourself and really think that you don't belong here, especially if you are, I'm not going to say especially, but perhaps if you are a person of color at a predominantly white institution, or even a woman in a male-dominated field or male-dominated department, you will have moments where you feel like you don't belong. You will have moments where you feel like people are smarter than you, like you're not studying enough, you're not reading enough, and you cannot base your success on what others are doing, because the reality is we're all just in here trying to make it, and we're all putting on this face like we have our stuff together. Yeah. Everyone on the inside is freaking out. Everyone is really trying their best to balance and survive. And that's the thing. You want to survive and stay afloat and not flounder in this experience. So think about, you know, what it is that you really want to gain. And I'll share something with you that my advisor told me before I began. And he said, the PhD is really about disciplining the mind. It's all up here. And if you're just in this to get through the coursework and to get this degree and hopefully make some, you know, money in the bank, that's really not what it's about. This is a lifelong learning process, and you know, I never really considered myself a lifelong learner until, you know, maybe like 5 years ago, and yeah, you know, just really think about it. It's a full-time commitment, but once you're in it, and everyone can do it. I say if I can do it, anyone could do it, right? I was a C average student in high school. I was a C average student in undergrad. But I busted my tail and did what I had to do in my master's program, and I really learned who I was as a professional, which made this experience even more better. And so think about some of those things, consider some of those things before you do this. And if anyone, I'll share my email address with the folks here, and if anyone wants to contact me, I'm very transparent, very open. I will give you the good, the ugly, and everything in between about my experience, because one thing I truly appreciate is transparency and authenticity about this process. Prior to me beginning, I heard horror stories, and then I heard great successes, but I really didn't hear anything in between. And so I really urge you to ask tough questions, get folks who are going to support you and give you the real deal scoop, and lean into discomfort. We often do our best learning when we're uncomfortable. So just because you're in an environment that may be uncomfortable, or you're in a program that may push you harder than you have ever been pushed before, don't be afraid and continue to go with it. I said a lot, sorry.
No.
Can't hear you.
Okay, 1 second.
There you go. Right.
There we go. Okay. I'm going to show you all how to access the Facebook page. Let me share the screen. The internet's acting choppy again, so you know how technology can be. All right, hopefully it's sharing. Can you all see it?
Not yet.
There we go. Nope. Okay.
There we go.
Okay, perfect. All right, so here it is, the new professionals and graduate students Facebook page. Oh. Well, the technology is acting up, so we will just not worry about that. But let's just look up our Facebook page. It is NASPA NPGS IVE. So in NASPA, N-A-S-P-A, NPGS IV, then a hyphen and E. And you should be able to find us, and you should be good to go. Like I said, once again, can you hear me?
If anyone had any questions that specific questions that I did not ask, you can feel free to tell them to email me their questions, or forward them to me, and I'll generate a response as well.
Yeah, and Walter will give out his contact information, and any questions that you guys still may want to ask him, continue to do. So, Once again, thanks again for everyone who was out there watching us, and I hope this helped. It really helped me as I'm just a first year in a student affairs program, so I learned a lot. So I hope you all have learned a lot as well. So thank you again, Walter, and we appreciate your time. So
Thank you.
all right.